Hello and welcome to week 12 Jing for CAS 126, Intro to Python. Jason here, and this week we're going to look at how Python can use a try and except block of code to handle error exceptions. So normally Python has a pretty decent system built in for telling you what errors have happened. So just for an example, if we try and divide by 0, it's going to tell us that, line 1 we had a problem and that was a 0 division error, division by 0. So that's all fine and good. For the most part, these errors are going to tell us, what's wrong with our program. But I think the key thing to keep in mind is, as people who are programming and developing, we should have the end user in mind. And just because an error that outputs might make sense to us, it might be frustrating or not make too much sense to the end user if it were to pop up. So, and also another thing is the program could get completely hung up or crash due to these types of errors. So anticipating those and using these statements will go a long way to making your programs more usable with the end user in mind. So for my example, I just used a basic math problem. So I just picked a volume formula. In this case, it was the cone. And the reason I picked this is I knew that the interpreter would pretty much take any value and give us an output, but in real life, we can't have a negative volume. So in order for this program to work in a real life scenario, you really need to put in this type of code to basically tell the interpreter, this logic doesn't really work in this scenario, and to basically safeguard against getting those bad values that you don't want. So I wrote this as a function. So we have volume cone. So it's going to try r for the radius is going to equal whatever the user inputs, entering the radius r in inches. H is the height. Again, they're going to enter how high it is in inches. Then v is the actual formula. That's the 1/3 times pi times the radius squared times the height. Then I just had it rounded off to 2 places just to make it look a little cleaner on the output. So this little code here is important because this is what says that the volume value needs to be greater than 0. We can't have a negative volume. That doesn't make any sense. So we're asserting that v is going to be greater than 0 and return v. Now, to handle that exception that's raised, if the value of v is not greater than 0, we have the except statement that's going to raise an assertion error. But it's going, instead of doing the generic, it's going to throw a much more user-friendly error. So we're going to enter the radius, we'll say 5. And just to check it normally, we'll do a positive value. So we see that we had radius and height were positive, so we got a good output. So let's try it with a negative value and see what happens. So we'll do 5 and then negative 5. And of course we got our error that says h can't be a negative value because that would make v negative. So that's just one example of using these try and except code blocks to catch errors in your program. So thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.